What's going on, everyone? Excuse me. To another edition of the Victory Life Legacy Podcast. I'm your host, former Tech standout offensive lineman and captain Dwight Vick, along with my co-host, 1067 The Fans, and also Nokes of the Vic 757 show. My guy and longtime friend Danny Nokes. Man, Danny, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It feels like it's been forever since we did a Vic 757 show. So I'm looking forward to football season. And tonight, since we're recording on NFL draft night, it's giving me the itch. I got the itch, man.
Yeah, I was in the Bird. We were in the Bird. We didn't get a chance to see each other, but a lot of people came up to me talking about you and I and Mike and that show. We have a lot of people that really can't wait. It's seasonal, so we don't do it year round like this podcast, but it works out good that you and I can keep the Legacy podcast going and talk tech, sports, NFL, NBA. We won't get into all of that tonight, but we're going to dive a little bit into the Virginia Tech spring game. It was a phenomenal weekend. And I was very excited for you, my guy, because you were called in. It was kind of a down low thing, and then you announced it leading up into the game on Twitter and social media outlets that you were going to be calling a game with legendary tight end, former Virginia Tech standout, Hall of Famer Mike Burnup. All right, let's talk
hmm
about that real quick, man.
Yeah, dude, I got to tell you, I tried to play it as cool as I possibly could because it did kind of happen very suddenly and unexpectedly. But it was an absolute honor. I couldn't have been more grateful to one, just share the booth with someone like Mike Burnup. I mean, the dude, I said it on Twitter, but he is an absolute encyclopedia of Virginia Tech knowledge. You could not imagine how much information about Virginia Tech that man has stored in his brain. It's amazing. And I've known him for a long time. I've had the chance to do some interviews with him and I've been on the air with him before, but
Mhm.
I didn't even realize how good he is at his job until you have to lean on him to help
Talk
you
about it.
analyze the spring game. Yeah, he was phenomenal, dude, and he's just a fantastic guy. You know, there's a reason that you never hear anybody with anything but an amazing story about Mike Burnup, whether it's they ran into him at the bar and they,
Mhm.
were chatting it up, having a couple of drinks, or maybe they just saw him, walking into the game or something. The dude, it just bleeds maroon and orange. He's an amazing person, and it was an absolute treat to get to share the booth with him. It was so cool.
No, yeah, Mike is a great storyteller. I tweeted that. I saw him in an interview leading up to the game. I think he might have been on the radio show I do a segment with Big Dog Sports Talk Radio.
Right. Mhm.
And I don't know if he was on there, but I mean, between him and the legendary Bill Roth, they are some of the best storytellers in sports media. I mean, I know I can talk and I got the gift of gab and I can give you great stories, but Mike has great insight. And I talked to him after the game. All the former players were in town, and the post game we had a former player family picnic. So I was with him and a lot of his teammates, man. And Mike looks great. He is funny. He's probably one of the funniest people I've ever
He
met
is.
because he'll roast you on the low, man. But um, you know, it was a great weekend, man. And uh, before I talk about everybody I talked to and pictures and things like that, tell me about your thoughts on the team because the spring game is one of those things that keep it very vanilla. You didn't really have a lot to work with because there's been so much attrition, transfers, new incoming players. So you were probably in the booth like, okay, I remember him, but who are these eight guys? How was it with just you calling the game, and what were your thoughts on the team? I know it was only March, and now April, excuse me, and we're getting ready to go into May. But what were your impressions?
Well, I thought obviously the Maroon team ran away with the game, and honestly, as I was calling the game, I was trying to make it seem like it was a little bit more competitive than it actually was. But I mean, let's be honest, the Maroon team absolutely dominated. The first half was actually almost a joke. Maroon team or the white team, I don't think had positive yardage in the first half. Now, what I'll also say just too about the format of the game and trying to broadcast that format was extremely challenging. And I have so much respect for anyone that calls football, for one, because in my experience, American football is the hardest sport to call. The only thing that I can imagine that might be a little bit harder is hockey, because I've actually never called hockey. And for the
Mm,
radio, you always have to be more descriptive for the radio because you got to help people find where the ball, or in that case, the puck would be. But The format made it very tough because the ACC network was skipping breaks and I was trying to follow those breaks.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
They had an hour time slot to try and fit the game in. So by the
Oh,
time that they were getting into the very end, you saw they were running the clock through every single stoppage that you could have imagined. And that was the plan, to run the clock in the second half. But
mm,
part of that you guys have to understand was because of the broadcast. ACC Network did 4 spring games that day. Miami was one of them, and they had a couple of more as well. So it was challenging, no doubt about that. But I would like to see, and I saw a couple of people say this too, I'd like to see a lot of those guys on the white squads, particularly the offense, get a chance to play behind the offensive line that the maroon team got, because Grant Wells, the connection with Caleb Smith was fantastic, right? Everybody was pumped up to see that 2 long
mhm.
touchdown passes. That was really cool. And I thought Grant Wells showed a lot about what he could do, but I didn't feel like we got to see enough of Jason Brown. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
didn't feel like he got a fair shot. Dude, every time they would snap the ball in the first half, there were 3, 4 defenders in the backfield swallowing him up. I mean, the
Yeah,
refs
yeah.
and he was in non-contact. So
Mhm.
the refs were probably even a little lenient with allowing him a few extra steps where he would have likely either been brought down to the backfield or hit at the line of scrimmage, something like that. So I was encouraged definitely by what I saw, certainly from the maroon team, but I'd like to see some of those other guys on the white squad get a fair shot with some of the ones that were playing for the maroon team.
Yeah, that's always the case, man. It's always funny. I was obviously I'm a former player years ago in the late '90s. I was part of 3 or 4 spring games. It's so funny because they split the teams up, and it's weird how they do it. And you have the coaches on the other side, so it's tough to get a fair assessment. I thought Grant Wells looked great. I think he's a quarterback we will win with. At the same time, I felt like Pry knew exactly what he needed to show, and what I mean is, it was very vanilla, obviously, but I think he knows that he had to hold some things back because not so much he was being discreet and worrying about people getting a scouting report, but it's more so about, look, we just need to get out of here, not get anybody seriously injured. We know as coaches what we have because we've been practicing going back to since he got there with the winter workouts and the training and the spring practices. So for the fans, it was just great to be back. I'll just say this before we are joined by our first guest, Mike McDaniel, writer for Sports Illustrated, and also does work with Sons of Saturday on the podcast. I want to talk really quickly before he jumps on about my experience. It was the first time I've been back in Virginia Tech in quite a while. I had gone
Mm-hmm.
to 16, maybe 17 straight spring games. Um, it was crazy. I had like a bowl streak of spring games, and I went with my wife, and it was the first time in a while I didn't go with my wife and kids. I just went with my wife, and I came back and I saw so many people. This football, if you can see it, I know we got people
Whoa.
listening. We got people listening. I stopped at Volume 2 bookstore where my wife and I actually met in college when she used to work there.
Wow.
Love at first sight for me. She didn't want to date a football player, but I put that game on her. And but this ball, and I'm not even done. I said to guys, went to Volume 2 bookstore, got some VT paraphernalia, and I got this ball. And let me just tell you, I was like, I'm going to get this for me. I'm not going to auction this off. I got Cam Chancellor, Bruce Smith, the Fuller brothers that were there, DBs, everybody you can think of, Tyrod Taylor, Willie Powell. I mean, Billy Hite. I got coaches. I mean, this is I can't wait. I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna get some more next time we have something, and I'm going to keep this. This is going to be my ball. Like yeah, my ball, my ball. But I'll just say this, and we'll get to our first guest, Mike McDaniel. I'll just say this: Brent Pry, the player engagement staff, and all the coaches on the staff. Tyler Bowen, I met him. I actually knew him before he went to Tech. Pearson Prelo was there. Talked to so many guys on the staff. Um, it felt like it should have been feeling for years. It was
Mm-hmm.
just great. This show they put on. Shout out to Devon Morgan who got with the VT Monogram Club and Hokie Club and put on the celebrity golf tournament with Shane Graham and so many guys coming back. Just so many guys that were there. So many guys will be back, but it really felt like the model they preach and that it was home, and the weather was great. Um, I just felt great. From Friday through Sunday, I was there, man. I didn't want to leave, but it was just great to be back in Blacksburg. And next year, I will tell you this to all our listeners and viewers, it will be even bigger next year because Pride will have a season under him, and we'll have a lot more people who wanted to come back but couldn't. And to be honest, and we'll move on to Mike here in a second because I got him getting ready to jump on. But there's still residue and residue from the previous regime where some guys still feel like, wow, is it really safe to come back? Can I come back? Am I wanted? But seeing all the pictures I posted, I got a chance to meet Mike Young. I
Yep.
mean, that was a great moment for me. Hung out with Ace Custis and Tyrone Drakefoot and so many legendary Hokies, man. It was just phenomenal, man. And next year, more guys will be back because I talked to my guy, Sharon Stiff, talked to my guy, Josh Oglesby, and a lot of guys, Rania Whitaker, a lot of guys, Mike, obviously my cousin, Brian Randall wanted to get back, but they couldn't. But I think that momentum, especially if they have a good season, you'll see more guys back next season. And that's going to help with recruiting. That's going to help with the culture, the brand. And I'm excited, man. I just wanted to throw that 2 cents about my experiences, man. But we got our first guest jumping on, man. This is going to be a great guest. I actually have never met Mike in person, but I've been part of some stuff we've done together with Sons of Saturday. I saw him on Sons of Saturday, and I was very impressed. He also writes for Sports Illustrated, and he has some great insight, and he's going to help us break down his thoughts on Virginia Tech, what he saw in the spring game, and what we should be looking forward this upcoming fall. Mike, what's up, man? Welcome to the Vicktory Life Legacy Podcast. It's great to have you on, man.
What's up, Mike?
Guys, appreciate you having me. Always good to chop it up with you, Dwight. Like you mentioned, you've been on my podcast before, so was more than happy to return the favor.
Yeah, man. No, I saw you on was it Boundary Podcast?
Yeah,
Recently.
yep.
You were Danny, he was killing it, man. Like I had it on in the background. I was watching the game and I literally just took my phone and my wife was like, "Who you listening to?" I said, "This is my guy, Mike, man." He was just killing it, man. I even typed in the comments, yo. He just was breaking it down. I am a big fan of people that know what they're talking about. Like Virginia Tech is such a big brand. You have so many different podcasts, which I've been on pretty much all of them. But some people are entertainers and some people provide insight. I love entertainment and insight. And Mike gave me and the listeners and the viewers that night so much insight. And I've been on stuff with him. He's great with Sons of Saturday. Shout out to the Sons of Saturday. Those are my guys. They're great, man. So, Mike, Danny, my co host. He does stuff with us on the Vic 757 show. Also does radio in DC with 1067 The Fan. So we're both happy to have you on. I want to get you on, Mike. Let's jump into it, man. What were your thoughts just with the weekend, the energy? We'll get into the game in a second and the players, but what were your thoughts about the presentation, the weekend?
The energy has shifted, right? Like the energy has 1000% shifted. That was the takeaway of the weekend, right? The spring game's a spring game, right? The product on the field is what it is. It's the spring. There's 6 or 7 months till the season starts. Guys are getting their feet under them, especially with a coaching change. So you can only expect so much out of the game itself. But when you talk about the entire weekend in totality and the way that former players like yourself, Dwight, flocked Blacksburg in a way that they really hadn't in 5 or 6 years. I mean, the energy around the program right now, we can talk about what wins and losses are going to be and, how well Pry will do or won't do. We don't know at this point. But the one thing I will say is that I think the program right now is in a position where they're at least going to have a fighting chance, right? It just feels like this coaching staff genuinely cares about the stuff outside of the product on the field, if that makes sense. Now, we know wins and losses dictate everything, right? And energy can change in a minute if you have a really bad year. We saw that under Fuente. Energy was real good for the first couple of years, and then it kind of flipped, And, we know what can happen, if the product isn't what it's supposed to be on the field. But it seems like Pry and his staff are really focused on getting everything else right at the outset, which is definitely different than what we saw out of the old staff with Fuente and company.
It really seems like there's an emphasis on two particular things, Mike, one of which would be alumni relations, right? Guys like Dwight are no longer afraid to come back to campus in Blacksburg. And that wasn't the case necessarily for Dwight, I think, but for some of the other former players, it obviously was. And the other thing, and we'll definitely ask Coach Loren Johnson about this a little bit later on, but there's more of an emphasis on creating relationships with coaches throughout the Commonwealth, high school football coaches. But I think there's just more of a relationship-based approach behind what Coach Pry is doing. And it's, I mean, like you said, there are a number of different things that we could point to here, but you can feel the energy and how different it is. And when we were in Blacksburg a couple of weekends ago, everybody was thrilled to be there. And I didn't get to go to the Sons of Saturday event. Next year, I definitely will when I don't have to worry about when I don't have to worry about calling the game the next day, man. I'm definitely going to be there next time. But you're absolutely right. The energy is completely changed. And I think a lot of people are as optimistic going into this season, despite the fact that maybe the roster hasn't been or isn't as good as it has been in a few years past. Still a ton of optimism right now.
There is. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, the relationship based energy around Pry and the staff is really what I think has automatically set him apart from what we saw under Fuente. And I think this program needed that, the people person, right, to run the program. And they had that for, almost 3 decades under Frank Beamer. Mm-hmm. And then when you go from that to, okay, here's Justin Fuente coming in, young, up and coming coach, had a lot of success as a coordinator, then obviously had good success at Memphis for a few seasons before getting to Blacksburg. I mean, if you flip back to 2016, when Fuente was brought in, there were 2 guys who were kind of up and coming in the coaching ranks, Tom Herman and Justin Fuente. Virginia Tech got one of the top coaches in the market that cycle. So it's not like Whit Babcock, swung and missed and, there was a bigger name out there. I mean, sure, they could have gone after Tom Herman, but I think Fuente made a lot of sense at the time for Virginia Tech. Now, obviously, it didn't work out. And I think, what Virginia Tech was hoping for, what Babcock was hoping for with that hire was that, Justin Fuente comes in, you still retain Bud Foster, and you kind of have a piece of the past, and you still have the relationships with the past under Frank Beamer. And then when Bud retired, the defense was kind of up and down his last few years anyway, when he was a defensive coordinator. But when he retired, it really became Fuente's program. And I think that's when Virginia Tech really lost their way, unfortunately. That the staff just really didn't have a good grasp from top to bottom of building the relationships. And we know about the recruiting and what that's been, but just in general, the relationships even in and around the program in Blacksburg, there wasn't really the energy around the school and around campus where the coaching staff, for example, goes out and, they participate in the school snowball fight. They're on campus like 3 weeks and they go out and participate in the school snowball fight. It doesn't seem like much, but it feels like, the coaching staff in the football program is kind of like one with the school. You didn't really feel that with Justin Fuente and his staff, especially the last few years. So I really think Brent Pry and his staff are really making a focus on obviously relationships and recruiting, which we can get into, but also the relationships kind of in and around Blacksburg, which I think is something that Justin Fuente and his staff really failed at and kind of took for granted over his time in Blacksburg.
No, that's a great point. And that snowball fight, I've been a part of those. I was there for 5 years and they're crazy. Pry has more courage than me because the cadets, they're crazy, man. Those snowball fights in the drill field were bananas.
They don't mess around. Yeah.
No, they don't, man. I've seen guys out there with shields and Avenger swords and helmets and it's crazy. But on a serious note, though, I want your impressions, Mike, on what you saw on the field. Right before you got on, I was just telling Danny how I thought Wells is the guy. I felt like he established himself as a leader. But, that's kind of the take most of us have. Give us some insight on what you thought. Who else popped out to you? Who else stood out? Or what position groups you thought, okay, this was a pleasant surprise, or this is actually where I thought they were?
Yeah, so the one guy that's really easy to point to because he had 2 touchdown receptions, but it's Caleb Smith. And it's not because of what he did on the field. That was real cool. He catch 2 touchdowns, long touchdown passes from Grant Wells. That's awesome. But it's how he looked physically. He looked like a bigger receiver. He looked like a veteran receiver. We hadn't really seen that out of Caleb Smith, prior to Brent Pry's staff arriving. He just looked like a bigger, more imposing guy on the outside, which Virginia Tech has really been searching for a number of years. Isaiah Ford, Cam Phillips, they leave, and Tech's kind of looking for that guy on the outside. They thought Trey Turner would be it. Then he battled some injuries and there was quarterback instability, and he never really fully reached his potential, I don't think, for as good as he was in Blacksburg. it really just felt like there was another step he could take, if he stayed healthy and had the quarterback play that he needed. But it does feel like Virginia Tech's really been searching for that. And Caleb Smith, at least in the spring game, looked like he could be a version of that guy on the outside this fall. So that was obviously really encouraging. Connor Blumrick, so I was real interested to see how they would use him. Now, Pry is hiding him. We know he's hiding him.
Yes,
he
he
doesn't
is.
want to show too much. But it's clear they're going to use him in all different sorts of roles on the offense. They're going to line him up everywhere, which is really interesting because, for as bad as that bowl game loss was to Maryland, you could see the athleticism with Blumrick. You could see it at times last year when he was kind of spelling. He was in a quarterback some when guys were in and out of the lineup. But it does seem like Blumrick's going to have a significant role, and he is going to create some matchup issues, I think, for linebackers in the ACC, because it's like, who do you put on him? Now he's too tall to be covered by a corner. He's also not really that fast off the line of scrimmage, but he's got some wiggle. He's obviously got athleticism. He's a big kid. So real interested to see what he does. The running back room too. So interesting how they're going to use the running backs, because I know Tyler Bowen, historically, at least what we've seen when he's called plays in the past, have been like 3 or 4 running backs that he's used. And it does seem like we know who that group is going to be. Like Jalen Holston, it feels like he's been at Virginia Tech for like 2 decades. Right? He's been at Tech forever. I think he's going to have a role. Malachi Thomas, I know he didn't play in spring game, but it's clear he's going to have a role with how he played towards the end of last year. Keyshawn King, Chance Black. Again, we talked about people who are going to line, players who are going to line up all over the field. Chance Black's another guy who I think is going to either be in the run, in the backfield as a running back. He's going to be split out as a receiver. They're going to find a way to maximize that skill set. And Brent Pry made that clear as well. And then Bryce Duke as a freshman, is he going to get some playing time too early in his career? So those are the good elements of the offense, right? And Grant Wells looked good, and Jason Brown didn't have really a fighting chance with how poorly the offensive line played on his side, but interested to see what he's able to do. The question marks I have coming out of spring game on the offense is the same question marks I had going into it. It's the offensive line, right? And I think Tech's going to have a 5 that they can rely on right up front. Obviously, having Johnny Jordan stay another year is pretty huge, because I thought he would have a bigger role last year coming over from Maryland, all Big Ten honorable mention player. He's going to step into starting center role, which I think is really important. But I think where Virginia Tech's going to have issues on the offensive line is with the depth. And can they find another guy in the portal, especially an offensive tackle? That's an area of concern for me. You have 1 or 2 guys get banged up, go out of the lineup. I'm just not sure where Virginia Tech is going to be able to turn. It's a lot of young guys, right? A lot of young guys in that room. Jack Hollifield looked pretty decent, when he got on the field during spring game, but are you really going to rely on a freshman to like pop in and play significant snaps? Tech already did that last year with Caden Moore. Worked out fine, but that's not something you want to hang your hat on with the offensive line play at Virginia Tech. So that's kind of my concern on the offensive side of the ball.
Mike, too, what's interesting, I had the chance to, in the broadcast meeting the day before the spring game, we got to ask Coach Pry a bunch of questions, and I specifically asked him about the running game, and like you mentioned, we didn't get to see Malachi Thomas, who we saw flashes from in a couple of different games last year. He broke out against Syracuse. And everybody else you list off, really, we've seen flashes of all of those guys. But you're right. The concern is with the offensive line. What I also thought was interesting about what Coach Pry told us was Tyler Bowen has really helped him understand more about what it is to be an offensive coordinator as well. Sorry, my dog decided to join the call too. She says hi, by the way. But Tyler Bowen and some of their other offensive staff members have really helped Coach Pry kind of develop an eye and an understanding of how teams are going to try to beat his defense, because he's been a defensive coordinator for most of his career, and certainly as of late. And so he's understanding more about how to confuse defenses with the way that they go about doing things on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm really excited to see, once they've had a full offseason together, what sort of things they draw up and what sort of ways that they try to really free some of these teams. Because you mentioned Connor Blumrick, he's a dynamic player, but they didn't really open up the playbook a whole lot.
No, they really didn't. And I do think with a more defined role for him, I do think it's going to help. I mean, the way I go back and look at this too is, Blumrick was not a quarterback at Texas A&M. He came in as a quarterback. He lost the job to Kellen Mond. Pretty obvious why that happened. Kellen Mond, very good player, loses the quarterback job to him. He plays kind of this H-back special teams role for A&M. And I'm sitting here thinking, look, if Jimbo Fisher, a guy who's known for developing quarterbacks, if Jimbo Fisher doesn't think you're a quarterback, why does Justin Fuente and his staff all of a sudden think Connor Blumrick's a quarterback when you're in your final year, right? It's kind of like the lame duck year, but it's a lame duck year because you never gave yourself a shot, right? You're relying on Burmeister, who's been real banged up. Your other options at quarterback just simply are not very good. So now you have a more defined role for Blumrick, something I think better fits his skill set. So I'm real interested to see how they use him here this fall.
You know what? I'm this is why I have Mike on, because Danny, I love the fact that he talked about the offensive line, which obviously I'm an ex-offensive lineman, but at the same time, I've tweeted numerous times, if you look at the elite programs or the very good programs, they have very good LOS play, which is the line of scrimmage, offensive and defensive lines. You have to have that, which I'm glad Mike touched on, because it's not a sexy position. Fans and media, guys don't really break down the offensive line because the offensive line plays as one unit. But he's right about that, because the ACC right now is not the ACC where we see all these gauntlet of teams, but it's still a very physical conference. When you look at Pitt, Miami, and some of the other exotic defenses, you're going to see Georgia Tech, a young, aggressive defense. So we're going to need guys to step in and be ready, because football is interesting. It's a short but long season in regards to it's over before you know it. But at the same time, there's moments when you get in that stretch where you need all hands on deck, man. And I'm also glad Mike brought up Blumrick, who I saw it firsthand. I was on the sideline with former players, and I looked at him, and he's going to be a huge X factor. He is one of those guys in the red zone. Also, when you need those big third down catches, those gadget plays, the wildcat, the wild turkey, he's going to be very, very unique. And I talked to Bowen after the game, because I actually know Bowen. We met years ago at a coaches clinic in Tyson's up here in Northern Virginia. And he's really excited. Of course, like I told you guys, or at least told you, Danny, before Mike jumped on, there's a lot they're going to bring in come when we get ready to play the ODU game. Speaking of that, Mike, again, I'm not going to do the over under, because it's May pretty much, and we can't really break down what's going to happen. We still got some guys we got to get in the portal, some guys going to step up. But when you look at this coming season and you look at, the personnel groupings we have, the schedule starts off with some favorable matchups, then you get into ACC play. What are your expectations? You look at some of the holes we have to fill and some of the things we're going to do. What are your expectations for first year Coach Pry? What are your expectations?
I think when you're coaching at a school like Virginia Tech, I think a reasonable expectation at the floor, right, when expectations couldn't be any lower, is to make a bowl game, right? And it's a brutal stretch in October, right? I mean, Tech's playing. Tech's got four games in 5, where they got teams that could win like 8-9 games, and they get them like all in a row. It's not ideal for a first year situation. It's interesting because I think Virginia Tech roster wise is in a worse spot overall in totality than they were a year ago, as we sit here, recording at the end of April. Again, portal happens. They're going to lose some more players to the portal as Pry begins to weed out some of the position groups. We talked about running back, where for some reason Fuente and his staff recruited like 17 running backs, and I don't know why. But you have that issue at spots throughout the roster. There's still going to be more of that coming. There's going to be guys transferring in that could make a difference, obviously. I think Tech needs to go after another offensive lineman. There are concerns for me too on the defensive side of the ball up front, not with the starters, but depth pieces, guys who really haven't played that have talent. But again, you're asking them to play significant roles in year one with a new defensive scheme. That's not really a spot you want to be in. I think reasonable expectations are try to make a bowl game in year one under Pry. Try to continue to establish, the relationships in the state, reestablish those, with some of the, older coaches who have been around more than 5 or 6 years as well. The guys that Beamer reached out to, in his final years as a head coach, reestablish those relationships, establish your recruiting footprint, which is what they've talked about, have Virginia be your recruiting base, recruit the DMV, recruit North Carolina and Tennessee and Kentucky, West Virginia, states you can easily get to from where you're at, jump into Ohio and Pennsylvania where it makes sense, but really establish a recruiting footprint, because that's something that was missing. It felt like every year under Fuente, there was a different plan. 1 year it's North Carolina to Virginia Tech, right? Then it's Virginia to Virginia Tech in year one. And then it's Texas to VT, right? The infamous Texas to VT movement that never was. So it felt like every year there was a new plan. Every year there's a new, director of recruiting. Like, can we get guys settled in one role? And can they be here for the long run? And I understand the last few years, I thought Tech did a better job the last few years, quite honestly, of, getting guys in the building who understood Virginia Tech. I thought Justin Hamilton got a really raw deal.
Raw deal. Say it again. He got a raw deal. Yeah, he did.
He was thrown into a role he wasn't ready for. And I don't think that was fair to him, because now I think he's in a really, really tough position. I'm interested to see kind of what happens to him moving forward, but he was known and understood as an up and coming coach in the business. And then he's thrown into a defensive coordinator role like 3 or 4 years before he's probably ready. And he has said this is, words coming out of his mouth. He told Mike Barber, Richmond Times-Dispatch, he said, when I took over the defensive coordinator role year one, I didn't really know what a Power 5 defense was supposed to look like and how it was supposed to be run. I mean, he said that to Mike Barber, right? I mean, it's from the horse's mouth. And that's a tough situation to be thrown in. I think Virginia Tech did a better job under Fuente the last couple of years. It was little too late, but getting guys in the building who kind of understood the school, understood the culture. And this is my one take. I've floated out there a couple different times. I'm going to float it out here on this podcast. I think the Fuente to Baylor thing, I think fans, or at least I hope this is the case, because it means Virginia Tech is in a lot better situation down the line. I think Virginia Tech fans are going to look back on the Fuente to Baylor thing, where he almost left and he went back to Witt and said, I need this, this, and this in terms of infrastructure from buildings and, upgrades to the locker room and the weight room and all that, to I need more personnel, right? I need more people on my staff from a human capital perspective. I think Fuente almost leaving for Baylor is one of the best things to happen to Virginia Tech. They're going to be in a situation now moving forward where their staff is going to look like a staff that's at the upper level of the Power 5 in terms of numbers. They're going to have state of the art. We know that they're planning to renovate the locker room. They're doing work on the weight room. We've seen what they've done with the nutrition center. Like, this is going to be a program that is going to have the best of the best in terms of facilities and, experience for the student athlete that they would not have had, in my opinion, for maybe a couple more years if Fuente didn't almost leave for Baylor. Because Fuente was coming off a bad year, but he was still dealing from a position of strength because of the first couple of years he had in Blacksburg. And Whit Babcock took him seriously when he almost left for Baylor. And things didn't work out the last few years on the field, but ultimately I think that Fuente almost leaving for Baylor and what Tech is going to get out of that now that he's gone, I think is ultimately going to be a win for the program.
I'll tell you what, they got two.
Go ahead. Hold on, Danny.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say that is such a great point. I actually tweeted when he was flirting with Baylor, I said, Tech fans, be careful what you wish for. I was not an anti-Fuente guy. I just wanted him to be more personable and do what Pry is doing. And that just wasn't in his DNA. I heard that on the Sons of Saturday podcast. He just wasn't that guy for that. But from the coaching perspective, as far as what he needed for the program, he was dead on. And when he came back to Witt, that was huge, because now you're seeing it with the budget, the staff. And I took a tour of the facilities on Saturday when I was up there in Blacksburg. And Mike is spot on. But go ahead, Dan. I just want to reinforce that point he made.
Well, I was just going to drop in. They just got 2 big fat donations of the multi-million-dollar variety. I mean, massive individual donations, right? And it's not like you can expect that sort of thing to happen every single year. But Mike makes so many good points about the little steps that were taken, even towards the end of Justin Fuente's tenure, that actually did go in the right direction. Now, defense was brought up too in that last answer, Mike. And another thing that was interesting about the production meeting that we had with Coach Pry was listening to him talk about how he thinks that having a good defense will take you a longer way in the ACC than it will in most conferences. And obviously, the three of us, we watch a lot of ACC football. We know exactly why that is. It's just not a particularly strong conference, and there aren't a particular amount of good defenses here. That's why Pittsburgh has had some success over the last couple of years. They play they play defense and they run the football. And I think Coach Pry's strategy is similar, but at the same time, he's trying to find his own wrinkles and whatnot to the program. So his defensive staff, as we get closer to the start of the season, I'm excited to see what they can do as well.
Yeah, and also just kind of the foresight to move guys around, right? Yeah. It seems trivial, right? To be like, oh, just switch some guys around during the spring, but Fuente didn't do a whole lot of that. And Pry comes in and he's like, you know what, Kelly Lawson, you're at the wrong position, buddy. You should be playing defense. Why are you playing wide receiver, right? Chance Black on the offensive side, buddy, you can play some more receiver, right? What are you doing? Just take the snaps at running back. Like moving Gunnar Givens, right? Highly touted recruit, moving him inside defensively, from first he's an offensive tackle. Now he's defensive end. Now he's defensive tackle, right? He's moving guys around, which is great. Jamari Connor, moving him out of his essentially a nickel role, which was basically boomer bust. Let's call it what it is. It's boomer bust.
Yes.
Right. And I made this comparison too. Jamari Connor's got a lot of Dietrich Bonner in him, where like his good is real good, but in pass coverage, it's like, man, you sometimes leave some to be desired, right? Yeah. And I think, moving Connor more to a safety role, less in the nickel role where he's, isolated against a really fast slot receiver, I think that's really going to benefit him. So my concerns with the defense, I talked about the defensive line and the depth there, like injuries happen in the trenches. That's where my concern is. When you look at linebacker play, Dax is going to be at a more natural middle linebacker position. I thought last year, Fuente and his staff tried to get him more into that role, but he would just never seem comfortable. Spring game seemed a bit more comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. So that was one of my initial takeaways. It's like, all right, this guy's a veteran leader and he's looking comfortable in the middle of the defense. And, being that vocal leader on the field is something he's always excelled at, but now it looks like he's got more confidence to him as far as how fast he was playing and how he looked. And I don't want to take too much away. I know it's a scrimmage. Defenses tend to play faster in the spring. I get all that. But at the same time, there were some positive signs there in the middle of the defense. I was a little bit disappointed with Breon Murray in the spring game. And he's a guy who's been around a long time. And a few years ago, it felt like every time he got in the game, he made a big play. And I was like, all right, I got all these hopes for Breon Murray. And then COVID year happened. He's in and out of the lineup. He missed a bunch of time. Last year, he was kind of buried on the depth chart, didn't play much. And now I think he's really going to be kind of like that third corner, right? It's going to be Chapman Strong. And then if one of them goes out, Breon Murray's probably in the game. So hoping to see a bit more out of him. That was kind of a concern coming out of the game. But, I think Virginia Tech's defense is going to be pretty good. I mean, I feel that maybe that's overconfidence. Maybe I end up being wrong about that. Maybe that's overconfidence in Pry and what he's done at Penn State. And, maybe it's a little bit of, bias towards like what I think some of the guys on the field can do from a personnel standpoint with some of the veterans. But I do feel like Virginia Tech's defense is going to be in more of a position to be successful. Again, not a shot at Hamilton. I just think Pry, with his experience and what he brings to the table, I think he's going to be able to relate to the players more quickly, because I know Chris Marv's a defensive coordinator, but this is Pry's defense first couple of years, right? He's bringing Marv along with him, and this is going to be Marv's show here in a year or two, but Pry's going to have, his hand in the defense significantly. And I think having that experience in the room, it's like bringing in a Bud Foster type guy at his prime, because that's what Pry has kind of emerged as, as the defense coordinator at Penn State. So I think it's really going to help this defense.
He referenced Bud Foster and Beamer in his presser when he first got hired. He got emotional, but he talked about being able to watch them and being a disciple of Bud, and how he even shows when he was at Penn State, he showed Virginia Tech film to recruits and to players about gap integrity, attacking the line of scrimmage. I mean, here's the thing, and I know this from inside coaches and just from knowing Pry, The defense this year will be reminiscent of what Bud Foster's defense looked in the prime, but it'll still be Pry's defense. So keep that in mind. I think people need to kind of remember that he's a Bud Foster disciple, but he has his own vision and policy and the way he does things on defense, man. Mike, this has been great, a lot of fun. I want to hit you with this before you leave and jump off. But you talked about recruiting, man. What are your thoughts so far? I know everybody, if you're on Twitter or Instagram, you see Virginia Tech coaches are hitting the state hard. I mean, they've been in schools we haven't been in 8 to 10 years. Tab, Virginia Tab, York. They were in Wakefield, up in Arlington. They've been everywhere. But this is always a hot topic with Tech fans because, we got to get 5 stars. We got to get, there's always in those Twitter spaces debates. I think recruiting will go as the coaches invest and as we get more wins. But just real quick, Mike, what are some players that we have to get or we should get or be keep an eye on as fans? And also, what are your thoughts so far on their approach and what they're doing?
Look, when you talk about overall approach to recruiting, I went to a really small private school in Dumfries, Virginia, St. John Paul the Great Catholic High School.
I know what that said.
First graduating class. When I saw Sean Quinn was in there talking to the football coaches, I'm like, you know what? We really are hitting everywhere, right?
We're hitting everywhere.
We're hitting every school on the trail, right? You name it, like they're hitting that school. There's a presence in the 757, Dwight, as you know, that there hasn't been in quite some time. There's the presence in the Richmond area that there hasn't been in quite some time. DC Metro, all of a sudden, Tech's not neglecting the DC Metro area anymore, and that's huge. As far as individual prospects, to be honest with you, in year one, it's less about that for me. And it's more about establishing the relationships so that down the line, like in the class of 24, the class of 25, the class of 26, you're all of a sudden getting 2 or 3 of the top 10 in the state, 3 or 4 of the top 10 in the state versus like 1 every 3 or 4 recruiting classes. So in terms of the 2023 class, in my opinion, get who you can get. Right? Don't completely embarrass yourself on the trail, which I don't think Pry and his staff will do. They're putting in the effort, which is really important, right? Effort is something that we haven't seen in the state of Virginia in years. You're seeing the effort, you're seeing the relationships being built. And I want to caution fans too, listening to this, like, don't focus in so hard on the recruiting rankings in this first class. And maybe not even so much in the second class. We should see some progress, right, in the second class, but it's really, really hard to come in and, as a new coach, establish relationships, right? And in a way that you're going to get these kids to buy in, right? And to come in when they're juniors or going into their senior year. Now, all of a sudden, this is the first time you're hearing from Virginia Tech. That doesn't happen in a lot of schools, right? A lot of schools you've been hearing from for a long, long time. And Brent Pry's got to repair all of that. He's got to repair the relationships with the high school coaches first, and then try to establish relationships with rising seniors, right? Juniors going into their senior year, sophomores going into junior year when you've already have hoped to make contact. So it's going to take a little while. So I caution fans a little bit. I think there will be some decent early returns. I think you'll see a player here and there. You're not expecting Virginia Tech to land, but they land, right? You're like, all right, that's a good sign. But I think the class of 24, class of 25, especially, is where you're going to start to see, whether or not the staff is really going to be able to close the deal. Establishing the initial relationship is great. You got to do that. It's something that hasn't been done in a number of years at Virginia Tech, but they got to close the deal, right? The staff's got to close the deal with players. And I think we're going to see more of that moving forward. And I hope to see some of that here in the class of 23, but you got to temper expectations a little bit for sure.
No doubt, man. Mike, and I forgot you were from Northern Virginia. Danny is a Northern Virginia guy. I'm a Tidewater guy and moved to Northern Virginia in 2000. And this is home for me up here, in the DMV, Northern Virginia, man. Dumfries. I would not have guessed you were from Dumfries, though. I knew you were from Nova when I tweaked.
Yeah.
Dumfries is a different type of town. It's Nova. It's near Woodbridge and Dale City. I have clients in Dumfries. And it's the new part of Dumfries is immaculate, but the old parts, those mom and pop stores, they look like they haven't changed since before integration, bro. It's built different.
Yeah. I'm
Dumfries is built
from
different.
Dumfries, live in Fredericksburg now, but yeah, man, it's different. It's different from the rest of Northern Virginia, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I love it all. I'm a Prince William guy. I live in Gainesville, man. I love Northern Virginia, man. I'm a VA guy, man. But once again, it's great to be on with you, man. This time you have been on mine. I'm gonna get you on again, maybe on the Vic 757 show with Danny, myself, and Mike, man. But on behalf of Vicktory Life, man, we appreciate you for jumping on, man. How can people follow you on Twitter? And what you got coming on? What you got coming up here soon?
Yeah, Sports Illustrated, SI.com is where you can find me at breaking news, trending news writer there. Check out Hokie Hangover podcast, basketball conference podcast on social media. First of all, we do, ACC football, basketball conference. We do all the tech coverage. Dwight, as you know, you've been on that pod with Ricky, Andrew, and myself. So definitely go check it out there. And then at Mike McDaniel SI on Twitter, you can follow me there and find all my stuff.
The amazing Mike McDaniel. Thank you so much, man. We appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah,
man.
Take care. Have a great one. That is Mike McDaniel leaving us, folks, man. He just gave us some great insight, breaking down the Virginia Tech spring game recruiting, also this upcoming season. Now, from one great guest to another, my Virgo brother, the legendary, one of the best school coaches in Virginia, a fan favorite, the one and only Highlands Springs, the Richmond mayor, the governor of Virginia, Loren Johnson. LJ.
I'll pay you later. I'll pay you later. I'll pay you later.
Yo, it's great to have you on, my guy, man, along up here with my guy, Danny Nokes, man. We are so happy to have you on. Just everybody listening, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, when we air this, man, Loren was so gracious to join us, man. He just finished practice. If you think I'm busy, this is another one of the hardest working men in the Commonwealth, whether it's coaching, speaking, interviews, motivating, resolving conflict in the streets. This guy is a phenomenal individual, man. I have so much love and respect for Loren. LJ, welcome to the Vicktory Life Legacy Podcast. You've been on the Mike Vick show with me, the Vic 757 show, but we got you on this one, man. I want to ask you, and let's just dive into it. I was up there with you. You surprised me. I didn't know you were going to be up there. So, Danny, I don't know if you noticed, but you probably saw the pictures on Twitter. He has two sons being recruited by everybody. One is a freshman, one is a junior, and they are just every time I look, they're getting offers. And I'm doing a tour of the facility, and I see Loren pop up. I'm like, oh yeah, and he said, I'm here on the recruiting stuff. The former players were there. He was there on recruiting with the other high school, and I don't know if he was there as a high school coach or dad, but before we talk tech and all of that, man, how does it feel, LJ? I haven't even asked you this. I'm gonna ask you this on our show, to be a father with two high-profile recruits, because Highland Springs has its fair share of high-profile recruits. You guys have a lot of guys, but to be your own sons, one a freshman, how does it feel for you and your lovely wife Kim, man?
So I think Vic and Danny, it's exciting, but it's also worrisome. And I'll say that as a Hokie fan. I want to give my sons the flexibility and the opportunity to kind of do their own thing. But like I told the coaches when they came in here recently on a recruiting visit, it's very difficult for me to say go somewhere else, right? When you're a Hokie. So that's just honest. That's being transparent. But I want him to go to the school that best fits him. And I always would look at, Emmitt Smith, his son didn't go to Florida. He went to Stanford. You got all types of, dads that were good at their school, and then those kids don't go to those schools. So I always wonder how those guys feel. That's how I feel. If you ask me to put a title or a word on it, Dwight or Danny, I cannot do it. It's like a mixed bag of cereal. It's like putting Captain Crunch, Twix, Cheerios, all of that together. You know what I'm saying? And then putting it in a bowl and pouring milk in there and just having a free fall. We just want them to make the best decision. They have some things out there in front of them that are going to be tremendous. Both of them are going to graduate with their associate's degree. So they'll go into college, wherever they go, with 60 hours, giving them the flexibility to do some different things. Yeah. The youngest of the two, the freshman, is already taken 3 years of Chinese.
Wow.
Yeah. So you got to marry up, man. You got to marry up. I married up. I married up. My wife is very intelligent.
Shout out to Kimberly. Kim, beautiful woman, beautiful person. Shout out to her. LJ gets a lot of credit, but she's right there by his side and holding down that family and also doing her part too. Yeah, he's got a
Absolutely.
great
You're
wife.
absolutely right, Dwight. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, they they have some flexibility. The oldest son, they're both the associate degrees will be in business, and it's a program that's here at Highland Springs, giving kids the opportunity to explore the business field as much as they want to. Some kids go into it and do extremely well. Some kids, just take the extra credits and move into something else. My boys want to do a little bit of commercial property real estate. So they've talked about that. They've got some plans, down the road if things go well, and if things don't go well, based on their dreams, they got some plans of things that they want to do and things that they talk about. They're only 2 years apart. So there's a lot of conversation about what they want to do. But going through this process is phenomenal. They've worked toward it. I always said this, and I can say this on air, and other people may be upset, but I know it to be the truth, and the boys know it to be the truth. I always said when they were like 5th grade and 3rd grade, I said I got one that's really, really phenomenal. I mean, just he loves to hit, he loves to tackle, he will run through your chest. And then I got one that's got to figure it out. And once I start to see the one figure it out, I told people, they're gonna be in trouble. I said the combination of the two, one is intellectual and he does a phenomenal job, seeing things and envisioning things and preparing himself for, game day. The other one is like he's just a dog. He'll bite you even if you don't ask him to bite you. He'll bite for you even if you don't ask him to bite for you. So he just wants to be out there and play, and then you can see the temperament in both of them. But the oldest one is very cerebral. He's going to think. The youngest one is he has a photographic memory. He can see a play, dissect the play. That's what makes him good at his young age of 14. And he is very, very physical. Somebody asked him today, a coach asked him today, he was sitting in my office, coach walked in, he said, man, would you like to, you wouldn't like to play DB? He said, it's not enough contact for me. So that says a lot about his personality. He said, it's just not enough contact for me. So we left it alone. He was getting his lunch and then going on to class. So he left. And the coach looked at me and said, he's 14. I said, he's 14. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good mindset. Yeah, pretty good mindset for a ball player.
Yeah, Danny, before you hit LJ with a question, man, I saw both his sons play. Everyone knows I'm a huge Loren Johnson and Highland Springs fan. I try to watch their games. I keep up with their scores. I live in Nova, so me and Shanice went to the Stonebridge Highland Springs State semis. Highland Springs and Stonebridge, two of the best programs in the state. We all know that. His younger son, both his sons and his team played well. It was a tough loss, a couple of questionable calls, but Stonebridge earned the win. They went on to win states and beat Maury. But his youngest son, I heard his name called. You can ask Shanice, my wife, 7 times in a row. He was on every play. And Stonebridge, they challenge you at the line of scrimmage because they will run the ball. This is not, they are a very good program. I have a lot of respect for what they do over there in Loudoun, man. And his son, I remember walking to the car with Shanice. I said, man, I didn't realize, I knew about the older brother, but I was like, man, LJ got 2 dogs in that house, man. It's going to be a lot of fun, but go ahead, D. I know you got some questions too.
Well, Loren, I'm kind of curious as to what some of the challenges, if any, that you have in trying to separate being a coach and being a dad. That's kind of a unique spot to be in, right? You've got 2 of your kids that are on an incredibly successful team that you have there at Highlands Springs. I'm here in Richmond. I know all about y'all's success, man. Gary Hess and Gary Criswell call a bunch of your games. Those guys are my boys. I used to work with them. I know all about what Highland Springs does. But so, as you go through the recruiting process with those guys, but you're still trying to focus on Highland Springs winning games. What are some of the challenges as to how you kind of keep them separate?
Well, I think the kids here in the program have done a good job, right? Of just, what's the best way of saying it? Just treating them as players, right? So I can treat them as players, and then the kids treat them as players. Even some of the older guys that have played here, they just come back and they work. They just continuously work and help them get better. So there have not been as many challenges as you would think. The biggest challenge for me is, I guess, with Braylon was the amount of talent that was in the secondary. So when he stepped up to play varsity football, it was this spring. of 2021, right? Excuse me, 2020, COVID year. And he didn't get a lot of reps. So he had to find his way through. Like, you got Damon Harmon, went to Oklahoma. You got Takai Heath, who's on the team with us now. You got Dominique Kill, another kid that played. You got all these guys in the secondary playing really, really well. So he had to kind of find his way in. And with that, like, he just had the long snap. That's how he was going to make plays. He had to get on special teams to make plays. So when everybody saw that, like, he's got to work the process. He can't just, circumvent himself or circumvent the process, you know what I mean, just jump in there and play. It wasn't going to be that way. People had an understanding that, okay, he's going to get treated like everybody else is going to get treated. So that part was eliminated. With Brennan, the youngest one, like, the coaches had to fight me to let him play. Like, I didn't want him to play as a freshman. Like, to start at middle linebacker as a freshman,
right?
I didn't want anybody to say we were playing daddy ball, that we would, like, I really made my coaches fight. They just came to me one day and said, hey, man, he's got to play. And once you watch him play, you're always smiling on the inside. Mm-hmm. But he's a good football player. He listens. He dissects things really, really well. So he earned the right to play. The school part is great because we're in the building together. We can eat lunch together. We can hang out. We can talk. I see the girls that are trying to talk to them. I see the girls that they're trying to talk to. Like, you see all that, right? So that's fun.
Yes, sir.
The hard part about what's going on here is the drive home. Like, when Braylon was younger, before he started driving himself to and from, he would ride home with me. And do you bite your tongue? Do you say something? You know what I mean? Do you talk about practice? Do you not talk about practice? So it just got to the point where I never talked about practice. And we very rarely talked about football at home. Just to be different, separate the two. Yeah. Now, when Braylon started driving, I never talked to him about football at home. Now, we do talk about the recruiting process. We talk about the good, the bad. So it wasn't a difficult process like you would think, Danny, because my wife and I made the agreement that we would separate being a dad, being a teacher, right, and being a coach. So it's a lot of, there's some separation there, and it causes sometimes to go without talking. Like, sure. Sometimes we don't talk. You know what I mean? Because you're in the building, you walk past them, you just say, what's up? You keep it going. But I get the opportunity to see the movie, watch the movie from a distance, and that's a pretty good deal. I enjoy that a lot.
LJ, you were there. Obviously, I mentioned earlier when you came on, we were both there 2 weekends ago in Blacksburg for the spring game, and it was a lot of new energy. You and I were at Tech when Pry was a grad assistant, man. So we've seen him go on, earn his stripes the same way you've seen you and Shane Beamer and Anthony Midget, so many former players and guys that have left Tech. He went to Penn State, and him and Poindexter did a great job recruiting, building that Penn State defense. Now he's back in Blacksburg, and it's tough for you to get back to Tech because you got Highlands Springs and other family things and other recruiting events and things you do with your program. But being back that weekend with all the guys that were there, they showed D'Angelo Hall on the Jumbotron, and you and D Hall were having such a great conversation. D Hall almost forgot to look up and wave to the fans. But just let the listeners know, and also the fans watching this, man, what are your thoughts about Pry? And also, what do you think he'll be able to do if everything goes his way as far as building Virginia Tech back to the brand that we know it should be?
All right, so that's loaded. The second part is loaded, right?
I know. We got a little bit of time left. We got a little bit of time left.
All right, so that's loaded. What my impression is simply this: he gets it, he understands, right? He's been around, he's listening, and with those two things, right? He's doing a phenomenal job. The last part of it, like, what's going to happen?
Let me rephrase my question. What do you think he needs to do to get the brand back to where it should be?
Just continue what he's doing. I mean, first of all, how does a guy from South Florida know about Virginia Tech? It's word of mouth, right? Especially in 1995. Like, you talking about 95, how do I know about Virginia Tech? Todd, Grantham, Billy Hite did a great job recruiting. Is word of mouth. Like, how do you even get to Virginia Tech from South Florida? Word of mouth. Then when you get there, you understand it, you're winning. You're winning with, the majority of Virginia guys, and then you sprinkle in a few that can help you out from the footprint, Baltimore, DC, Pennsylvania,
Florida.
a couple guys from North Carolina. You understand where I'm coming from? You kind of just get it, and those guys are together, and you can kind of move from there. So for him to do it, he's got to continue on that same path, and I think he's doing that already. The biggest thing is including alumni, right? All of us know the success, but now we got to put our money where our mouth is as well. Like, we got to help in that situation. Like, we got to do our part of communicating and spreading the word, which was done before by coaches. Now it's got to be done by the people that went there and actually know how great Blacksburg is. And then, you know, after that is all said and done, you know what I mean? He's got to continue to have the right people in place, people that want to build character and build men. And I think the staff right now can do that and do it well. The football will take care of itself in Blacksburg. You know what I mean? You got to win with the culture that you have, with the culture that's been developed. And you kind of got to enhance that culture. Michael Vick enhanced the culture, right? It was defense, special teams. Then you add that mix in there, then you're really, really good. So they probably got to win some games on defense and special teams this year. And then they kind of got to enhance the offensive side of the ball with due time and with play calling and stuff like that.
Well, Loren, this is another spot where you have maybe the most unique perspective of anybody that we could really talk to, right? Because as Dwight mentioned, you guys ran into each other when you were at the spring game, but that was sounds like when you were being dad, right? You were dad to your two sons. Coach Pry could approach you as one of the high school football coaches in the state of Virginia, and one that churns out a lot of really highly touted recruits.
A lot.
He could also approach you as just someone that helped build the program, you know, as a former player. So, you know, I'm kind of curious because you get the chance to see all of it. I mean, as a former player, as a coach in the state, and now as a dad of someone that's being recruited by the school, you get, what does it look like to you? I mean, in what they're doing, what do you notice about it that's different from what we've seen in the past?
So the communication is different from the coach's perspective, right? You know, that's there. The environment, you know, as a dad is there. You understand where I'm coming from? Yeah. The facilities as a high school coach, you look at it because you start comparing apples to apples and apples to oranges based on all the places that we've been, and we've been a lot of places. You know, you see rooms that used to be something else, right, Dwight, that are now this. Right. So there's so much development and so much growth. And then, you know, as a dad, when your son comes downstairs and says, okay, let's watch these entrances to games. Right. I've never experienced the first time I experienced you know, what's going on, Enter the Sandman, was Notre Dame last year. Oh, you understand where I'm coming from? That was the first time I experienced it. Because like in 1999, they weren't doing that. You understand what I'm saying? And I GA'd in 99. In 2000, it was there, but it wasn't the same. Like now, it's ridiculous. So you get the opportunity as a dad to watch your son compare the two. You know what I mean? And when they compare the two, you see a lot of what's going on. And then as a high school football coach, like when guys are coming in your office, sitting down, talking to you, oh, my lights, hold on.
His lights does do that. Yep. If you're not moving a lot,
no sense. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
Highlands Springs they got big time. They didn't got big time.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So when you have guys like when you have guys coming in your office and talking to you, like you can kind of get a feel for them and their desire to want to be great again. So Danny, those are the three things you see. Now there's so many opportunities. Like when you coach, as long as I've coached, like, you know, he mentioned Poindexter, he's at Penn State. You know, they've offered my sons, both sons, right? You talk about Virginia Tech, you know, both those guys there. You know, guys in South Carolina, I know that guy pretty well.
South Carolina.
You know what I mean?
We know Shane.
Yeah, and then I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Torian yesterday. You know, so you know a lot of people. So what you see now is Virginia Tech being present on a regular basis, right? When you can see them, when they can come out legally, they're out. You understand where I'm coming from? And if they get 2 visits, like I see them both times. Where in years past, I didn't see them both times. So that's the coaching part of it, especially in the 804. And then the rhetoric is the entire state, not just one locality, not just one area code. So that's what I'm getting now. You know what I mean? It's like we got to win the state back, not necessarily a particular
757
section of it. Yeah. And that's something that I'm hearing that's a little different, Danny.
Yeah, it is really good. And I'm a 757 guy, but I would get so annoyed because I'm like, I live in Nova, and Westfield has beaten Oscar Smith at the time recently, 3 straight years in the state championship. Northern Virginia has talent. Southwest Virginia has improved dramatically. And with Verina and Highland Springs and that area, it's no longer Hampton High Phoebus, Oscar Smith, and no, it is the state. And you have to win the state. We only have a few more minutes, LJ. So I got to ask you this. This is for me and some other fans, because I'm a big high school guy. And Danny, you've covered high school sports as well. We do high school and college. Highland Springs, you guys have been close the last 2 seasons getting that elusive 5th state championship. And both times Stonebridge had 2 top 10 ESPN plays against you. That one year, you guys in overtime 2 years ago, and the guy gets the one-handed catch in overtime, and it was crazy. It was trending online, but you have a squad coming back, man. I know we're in the end of April, getting ready to go into May, so we're not in that process of August, 2-a-days or preseason, all that. But just talk about the team you have, what you have coming back, and do you feel like this is a team that could eventually morph into a state championship contender like the previous Highland Spring teams?
So the one thing I'll tell you is that we're back into normal off-season routine, and I think that's huge for us. I mean, our program is built and based on our culture, right? The camaraderie that we have with each other. So we spend a lot of time in the weight room, and the kids are doing a phenomenal job eating that up. Like, they love it. But the team comes back. We got a quarterback that's going to be a junior. He's back for his second season. He's 2024. He's got a couple Power 5 offers. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. He's a ball player. Our entire offensive line is coming back. When I mean all five guys are back. They were extremely young, so we're excited about that. Our starting running back comes back. One of our 4 receivers is back, so we got 1 starting receiver back. But he's got a lot of guys that played that can help him at the receiving group. On the defensive line, we got 3 guys come back on the defensive line. We got our Mike linebacker coming back, who'll be a sophomore. We got 2 guys in the secondary at back. So we got quite a few guys back, and then we have our punter back as well, which for me is important. I don't know how other people feel about it. I feel about it. I think it's very, very important. So he's back as well. So we have a lot of opportunity to grow. And then our JV team went undefeated last year.
Scored 99 points on somebody, didn't y'all?
Whoa.
That was a couple years ago, but yes, they beat a couple teams this year by 60 points or more. So that's a talented group, and a lot of those guys, it's a lot of linemen in that class right there. So those guys will be juniors. So their class is 2024 as well, and we're excited about them. And there's a lot of young talent. Man, just leaving the field just now, they just came off the field. I hear the doors closing. Everybody's coming in, kind of chattering and stuff like that. When I'm on the field right now, there's probably 103 guys, and I gotta let some of those guys go because I got some freshmen that got to come in.
Oh,
that's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we're just in spring. I mean, we just we got the soft shell 707 helmets on, and we just so we don't collide in each other. And offensive line's working on themselves. Defensive line with Derek Hopkins, he's doing a great job.
Oh yeah, shout out to Derek Hopkins.
Skip is doing a great job. Chris Hill just got married. He's working with us though.
Wow.
So he's working with our DBs. We trying to work as hard as we possibly can.
By the way, Danny, I'm glad he mentioned Hill and Hopkins. I want to say this on this show. I didn't say it on the Vic 757 show, talking all things tech. Highland Springs, Loren Johnson's the face of the program, the head man, but his staff is also elite. The staff, what's my guy, the big guy, the lineman that does stuff with me, Russ. Russ.
Yeah, you got Russ.
His staff is elite, man. I sat behind the fence. I didn't even sit down against him. I sat on the fence, stood on the fence, and I just watched the interaction. And it's great because a great head coach like Loren, just like with Frank Beamer, if your staff is elite, you can work on certain things and know these guys over here are doing what they're supposed to be doing, man. So
Right.
shout out to those guys too, man. Great staff, man. Really great
Yeah.
staff.
And yeah, we got a couple Wahoos on staff, couple Virginia Union Panthers.
Boo.
You got some Virginia, you got some Virginia State, got some Virginia State Trojans on staff. I mean, you
Nice.
know, we got a guy that played at North Carolina Wesleyan, former quarterback DJ Johnson, he's back. Former wide receiver Chris Thaxton, he's back. Those guys are, you know, they're professionals now. DJ Johnson played for me and went to St. Albans, was the starting quarterback. Chris Thaxton went to UVA Wise. He's back coaching the wide receivers, helping us out. Jordan Wall, he played middle linebacker for me. He's working on his master's at Virginia Union right now. He's working with us. So these guys played now. You know, we've been here long enough where guys have played and they're coming back. So that's a phenomenal task. That's, you know, phenomenal to me as well, to get more guys that played here who understand the culture that can help, you know, establish what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's a great culture, man. You guys have become the standard, man. And if you look at Virginia State, known for great high school football, it's kind of morphed into a situation where it's the usual suspects, where you have Maury, Lake Taylor, Phoebus, Highland Springs, Oscar Smith, and Stonebridge, the usual
Yeah.
suspects, you know. So it's great, but I mean, I'm just telling you, it is amazing because when LJ got to Highland Springs, you knew about Macho, you knew about Jim Davis, you knew about the guys they put out there. But then when he got there, as he mentioned, what Mike did with elevating Virginia Tech, same thing happened with Loren, man. And I use
Big
him
time.
so much as an example because I tell people, and it was kind of what I said, what I hate to bring it up, but what Fuente fell short of as a coach. I think Fuente knew the X's and O's and knew how to get players and game plan. But when it came to culture, Virginia Tech's a unique university. And Loren told me when he first got there from Stonewall, now known as Unity Reed, when he left the 703 and did a great job up here, he said, "Hey, Vic," to me and my wife, "Hey, Vic, Shanice, when I got here, I spent the whole summer reading a book on the history of Highland Springs." And then he toured every mom and pop shop, the barber shops, and just learned the 804. And because it was, you know, he was on my Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight show, him and Troy Mans, and they talked
Mhm.
about both of them being outsiders at LC Bird and Highland Springs, and how now you can't even envision LC Bird or Highland Springs without either one of those guys. It's so funny how that works out, man. But Lauren, this will be great. This has been great. Excuse me, and this has been a lot of fun. I'm going to keep you on because we're going to wrap up the show. Danny and I do every episode. We do legacy spotlights, and I'll go first, man. While I go, you and Danny can think of who you want to shout out. This is the end of the show where we wrap up and we highlight somebody. It could be a teacher, a principal, an educator, somebody that rescued anybody that you did something blessed or heroic. We want to shout them out, man. My legacy spotlight to end the show is I want to shout out Coach Billy Hite. Uh,
Yes.
Today is his birthday.
No
I had
way.
not, yes, I had not
Oh.
seen either today or yesterday. I'm pretty sure it's either today, but I had not seen Billy Hite in years. I talked to him on Facebook. I sent him some Vicktory Life gear, but I had not seen him in years. And I was there with Andre Davis, Kevin Jones. A lot of us were in town. And after the spring game, the former players went over to the facility inside and we had some food, and Coach Hite came over there and I almost broke down in tears, man. Like, and he's so loved. Everybody, the guys from the 70s and everybody came over there and just took pictures with him. And I got him along with Loren and other guys to sign my football. And it was a blessing, man. But I just want to tell people, man, to the new age tech fans that follow me online, that see my podcast and hear me talk, Beamer was the guy, but Coach Hite is just as big in what he did for Virginia Tech as Beamer and Coach Kavanaugh and Bud Foster. Coach Hite was a great man, is a great man, and is a huge part of why Virginia Tech football and so many guys like myself had success on and off the field, man. Just a great guy, man. Danny, who's your legacy spotlight?
My legacy spotlight, the great Bill Roth. The great Bill
Oh,
Roth.
yeah, good
And
one.
I didn't get the chance to talk a whole lot about catching up with Bill at the spring game, but I didn't have the athletic prowess that both of you gentlemen did. So when I was at Virginia Tech, I started to become a broadcaster, and my mentor, my head coach, if you will, was Bill Roth. And the fact that he's coming back to call the football games again is so cool. And I know the fans are just absolutely over the moon about it. But he's been not only a mentor of mine, but a very close friend. I got the chance to, be in the production meeting with Coach Pry and Bill and like watch him really do his thing because he was doing the game on the ACC network. It was a treat. So, from him to Andrew Allegretta, who's now at Vanderbilt calling football and baseball there. I heard from John Laser, another former voice of the Hokies. They were all very encouraging while I called the spring game, but Bill is kind of where it all started for a lot of us. So he's my legacy spotlight.
Man, that's a great one. Bill Roth, man, one of the GOATs, man.
He's been on the show.
Yeah, he's been on the show. He's been on our show on this podcast. Yeah, that's right, man. Loren, I put you on the spot, man. You weren't planning this, man, but do you have anybody you want to give a legacy spotlight to?
So I got two guys, and I'm gonna stay with the Hokie trend here. And I just started these guys that you were talking, Danny. So it's like cutting it close, right? The first guy is Todd Grantham. All right, I'm going Todd Grantham. And I'm going Todd Grantham just because, without Todd Grantham coming into my school, I don't even get the opportunity to be sharing with you guys, talking with you guys, or hanging out. And what I'll tell you is this: December 18th, 1994, I was supposed to be going to North Carolina State. They kind of fooled around with the visit, and Johnny on the spot, Todd Grantham, said, "Hey, there's a plane ticket waiting for you at the airport. If you can make it, you can come to Blacksburg. I will pick you up." That's number one.
Wow.
It was graduation weekend that weekend, and a guy ran over to me as I was standing in the middle of Rector Fieldhouse, and he had a yellow jersey on, and his name was Maurice Deshazo. That's my second guy.
Yes.
That's my second guy.
That's
so I don't know if Maurice knows this, but he might have just been saying it because I was a recruit, but it meant a lot to me. He said, man, you come to school here, you need to wear the number 12. And I did.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Dude,
it was his graduation. It was his graduation day that day. And the impact of him running across Rector Field, they stopped him and they said, man, he just graduated from college. And that meant something to me because I'm the only male in my immediate household to have graduated from college. So when I saw that, he said, man, you can wear the number 12 at Virginia Tech. He said, you need to wear the number 12. And they said, as he was running away, he said, give him 12. And that's what it is. And
the rest is
I don't know if that's why they gave me 12, but I wore it and I was proud to wear it. And I said the same thing to Richard Johnson when I left. I said the same thing to Richard Johnson. I said, another Johnson's got to wear 12, and he wore it. So, you know what I mean? So we talk about those things, man. That's important. Yeah, that's my legacy.
I never knew that. See, that's why I love this, man.
That's amazing.
I've known LJ since 95, and I never knew why he wore 12. I didn't even know it was to do with Maurice, man. And I forgot about the NC State deal, man. But wow, what a blessing, man. What a great story. What a great, and two great people, man. I'm glad we do these and highlight people, man. It's not just about sports, it's about legacy, man. But Loren, man, thanks for jumping on. I know you're a busy man. Please send our love to your wife and your sons. I took a picture with them.
And my daughter.
And your daughter, your queen.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Hey,
I should have known. Yeah.
She's running track right now. She's out on the track. It's 8:30. She's still on the track with my wife. She's still running.
Wow.
See what I'm saying, bro? Superstars, man. Superstars. I didn't ask you the question Tech fans always want me to ask is when you're going to come coach at Tech or coach college. We'll leave that for another spotlight. We're not doing that. But thank you guys all for joining me. I want to thank our guest, Mike McDaniel from Sports Illustrated, and also Danny Nokes, 106.7 The Fan, my co-host and my brother. And LJ, as I always tell you, we appreciate you, man. Big fan. You my brother forever, man. So many people love what you're doing in 804 and beyond, man. Not just on the field, but more importantly, off the field. And to all the people that support Vicktory Life, the Vicktory Life movement, all the different podcasts and symposiums and community service we're doing, we want to thank you. And like we said, every episode, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you have a positive impact and you leave a great legacy, man. Thank you again, man. That's it for everybody. Salute. God bless.
Thank you, guys.